Amara, the blind dancer. In the heart of the village of Angoma, nestled between lush green hills and the calm, winding river, there was a girl who danced. Amara was her name, and though she had never seen the beauty of the world with her own eyes, she moved with a grace that left everyone in awe. Born blind, Amara learned to navigate the world through sound, touch, and the rhythm of life that pulsed through her veins. From the time she was a little girl, Amara found solace in dance. Her mother, a gentle woman with a melodious voice, would hum traditional songs as Amara swayed to the rhythm. Her feet learned the patterns of the earth beneath her, the vibrations of the drums guiding her every step. The villagers often gathered around to watch as she twirled and leaped, her body telling stories of joy, sorrow, love, and loss. But as much as Amara's dances were a source of joy for the village, they were also a mirror of her soul. When she was happy, her movements were light and carefree, like a bird soaring in the sky. But when sadness crept into her heart, her dances became slower, more deliberate, each step echoing the weight of her emotions. Amara, the blind girl's closest companion, was Zola, a girl with a heart as big as the sky and a smile that could light up the darkest night. The two had been inseparable since childhood, and their bond was unbreakable. Zola admired Amara's strength and often said that the world saw more through Amara's dancing than most people could with their eyes. To Zola, Amara was more than a friend, she was the sister she had never had. But even in the close-knit village of Angoma, darkness lurked in the shadows. Kofi, a man revered by the elders for his knowledge of herbs and traditional medicine, was a figure who commanded respect. But behind his calm exterior lay a man consumed by desires that twisted his soul. Kofi had noticed Amara's beauty long ago, her blind eyes and graceful movements igniting something dark within him. Kofi approached Amara one day after she had finished her dance by the river, where the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. He spoke in a voice that was smooth and gentle, but there was an edge to it that made Amara uneasy. He offered her gifts, spoke of how her dancing had enchanted him, and hinted at a life they could share. Amara, though blind, was not naive. She sensed the predatory nature behind Kofi's words and politely refused his advances. She did not feel the connection with him that she had seen blossoming between other couples in the village. Her heart was clear, and she trusted her instincts. But Kofi's pride was wounded, and the seed of resentment took root in his heart. Days turned into weeks, and Amara continued to dance, but she could feel the weight of Kofi's gaze on her more frequently. She tried E.W.T to push the discomfort aside, focusing on the joy that dancing brought her. Zola noticed the change in Amara's mood and tried to comfort her, but Amara brushed it off, not wanting to worry her friend. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Amara found herself alone by the river. She had gone there to dance away the sadness that had been gnawing at her heart, hoping that the cool evening breeze and the soothing sounds of the flowing water would bring her peace. As she moved gracefully on the soft earth, lost in the rhythm of the moment, she did not hear the quiet footsteps behind her. Kofi had been watching her, waiting for the right moment. His eyes, once filled with admiration, now burned with a sinister desire. When Amara finally sensed his presence, it was too late. She turned towards the sound, her heart pounding in her chest. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. It's just me, Amara, Kofi replied, his voice deceptively calm. He stepped closer, and before Amara could react, he grabbed her arm. Panic surged through her, and she struggled to break free, but Kofi's grip tightened. Let go of me, Amara cried, her voice filled with fear. She tried to push him away, but Kofi was stronger. The more she fought, the more desperate he became, until finally, in a moment of horrifying clarity, Amara realized what he intended to do. Kofi's attack was swift and brutal. Amara's cries for help were swallowed by the thick silence of the night. The river that had once been her sanctuary now bore witness to her worst nightmare. When Kofi finally released her, leaving her broken and bleeding on the ground, Amara felt as if the world had shattered around her. For a long time, she lay there, too numb to move, the pain in her body overshadowed by the agony in her soul. When she finally gathered the strength to stand, she staggered back to the village, her steps unsteady, and her heart heavy with despair. Zola was the first to find Amara. She had been worried when Amara didn't return home at her usual time and had gone out to look for her. When she saw her friend's disheveled state, her heart broke. Amara's once vibrant spirit was now cloaked in a darkness that Zola had never seen before. Without a word, Zola wrapped her arms around Amara, holding her close as the tears finally fell. Amara clung to Zola as if she were a lifeline, sobbing uncontrollably. Zola didn't need to ask what had happened. The pain in Amara's eyes and the bruises on her body told her everything. For days, Amara stayed in bed, refusing to speak or eat. Zola stood by her side, bringing her water, food, and words of comfort, though Amara barely responded. The vibrant, joyful dancer that the village had known was gone, replaced by a hollow shell of the girl they once admired. It wasn't long before Amara's physical condition began to change. Zola was the first to notice the signs of pregnancy. The reality of the situation hit her like a ton of bricks, but she knew she had to stay strong for Amara. When she finally gathered the courage to tell Amara, her friend's reaction was one of deep sorrow. I can't do this, Zola, Amara whispered, her voice barely audible. How can I bring a child into this world, knowing where they came from? Zola took Amara's hands in hers, her voice firm but gentle. Amara, you are the strongest person I know. This child, these children, are a part of you. They didn't ask for this, just as you didn't. But they deserve a chance at life, and I know you have the strength to give them that. Amara cried again, this time not just out of sorrow, but also out of fear. The road ahead was daunting, but with Zola by her side, she began to find the courage to face it. Months passed, and Amara's belly grew, as did her resolve. She still did not dance, the joy it once brought her now tainted by memories of that awful night. But with Zola's support, she prepared for the birth of her children. When the time came, Amara was filled with fear and anticipation. The labor was long and painful, the intensity of it overwhelming. As she cried out in agony, she felt something strange, a tingling sensation in her eyes. At first, she thought it was just the pain playing tricks on her, but then, slowly, shapes and colors began to emerge in the darkness that had been her world for so long. Amara's heart raced as she realized what was happening. She could see. The pain of labor faded into the background as the miracle of sight filled her with wonder. Tears streamed down her face as she gazed at the faces of the midwives and, finally, at the two tiny beings placed in her arms. Her twins were perfect, a boy and a girl, each with a head full of dark curls and wide, curious eyes. As she held them close, a profound sense of love and protectiveness washed over her. These were her children, born of her pain, but also of her strength. When Zola entered the room and saw Amara's tear-filled eyes, she knew immediately what had happened. Overwhelmed with emotion, Zola embraced her friend and the newborns, her heart bursting with joy and relief. "You did it, Amara," Zola whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You brought them into this world, and now you can see the beauty that you've always created through your dances." With her sight restored and her children in her arms, Amara felt a new sense of purpose. She and Zola made the difficult decision to leave Ngoma and move to the city. The village that had once been her home now held too many painful memories. They needed a fresh start, away from the shadows of the past. The city was a world unlike anything Amara had ever known. The noise, the bustling streets, the towering buildings, everything was new and overwhelming. But with Zola by her side and her twins in her arms, Amara felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They settled in a modest neighborhood, where the community was welcoming and diverse. Zola found work as a seamstress in a local shop, and Amara, determined to provide for her children, began to teach dance to the neighborhood children. At first, she was nervous, unsure if she could teach something she had always done instinctively. But as she watched the children move to the rhythm, their joy infectious, Amara realized that dance was not just a gift she possessed, it was a gift she could share. Amara's classes became popular quickly. The children adored her, and parents noticed how their little ones returned home happier and more confident. The small studio she rented began to fill with the laughter and the sound of drums, the echoes of her past life in Ngoma merging with the vibrancy of the city. For the first time since the assault, Amara began to feel at peace. As her dance classes flourished, Amara started to gain a reputation beyond the neighborhood. People began to talk about the blind woman who had regained her sight and now taught dance with a passion that could move even the hardest of hearts. Soon, local schools and community centers invited her to teach, and her influence grew. But with each step forward, there were still shadows that lingered. Amara couldn't completely escape the memories of the night that had changed her life. The nightmares persisted, and she often found herself waking up in a cold sweat, reliving the trauma. Yet, she refused to let the darkness consume her. Each morning, she would rise, look at her children, and remind herself that she was stronger than the pain that tried to hold her back. 3 years had passed since Amara and Zola had left Ngoma. In that time, Amara's children, whom she had named Ayo and Imani, had grown into lively toddlers. They were the light of her life, their laughter a constant reminder of the beauty that had come from her darkest moment. But as the years went by, Amara knew that she could not avoid her past forever. The decision to return to Ngoma was not made lightly. Amara had built a new life in the city, one where she had found peace and purpose. Yet, she knew that to truly move on, she needed to confront the man who had hurt her. She needed justice, not just for herself, but for her children, who deserved to grow up in a world where their mother was not haunted by fear. Zola, ever the supportive friend, agreed to return with her. They made arrangements for the children, leaving them in the care of a trusted neighbor, and set out on the journey back to the village that had once been their home. The road to Angoma was familiar, yet different. The landscape, once so vivid in Amara's mind, now seemed distant, like a memory from a lifetime ago. When they finally arrived, the village was as they remembered it, quiet, peaceful, with the same warm breeze carrying the scent of flowers and earth. But there was an air of tension between them as they walked through the village gates. The news of Amara's return spread quickly. The villagers, many of whom had heard of her success in the city, welcomed her back with open arms. Yet, beneath the warm smiles and embraces, there were whispers that Kofi had never paid for what he had done, that justice had not been served. Amara and Zola made their way to the home of the village elders, the heart of the community where decisions were made and justice was sought. The elders were surprised to see Amara, but they welcomed her respectfully, offering her a seat and listening as she spoke. With a voice that trembled but did not break, Amara told them everything. She recounted the night by the river, the years of silence, the birth of her children, and the long road she had traveled to find herself again. The elders listened intently, their expressions grave. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then, the oldest of the elders, a woman named Mama Abeni, spoke. Amara, you have shown great courage by coming here today. We are ashamed that we did not see the signs, that we did not protect you as we should have. But now that you have spoken, we must act. Kofi must be held accountable for his actions. The decision was made swiftly. The village could no longer turn a blind eye to the crimes that had been committed. Kofi was summoned to the elders' council, where he was confronted by the truth that he had long tried to bury. Kofi arrived at the council meeting with an air of arrogance, as if he believed himself untouchable. But when he saw Amara standing before the elders, her eyes now bright and filled with resolve, something shifted in him. The confidence that had once defined him began to crack. Amara, he said, his voice faltering for the first time. Why are you here? We have not seen you in years. Amara looked him directly in the eyes, her voice steady and strong. I am here for justice, Kofi. You took something from me that night by the river, something that no one had the right to take. And for that, you must answer. Kofi's face hardened as he realized the seriousness of the situation. He tried to deny it at first, to blame Amara for misinterpreting his intentions. But the elders were not swayed. They knew Kofi too well, had heard too many whispers over the years, and now that the truth was out, there was no going back. Under the pressure of the elders' questioning, and with Amara's unwavering gaze upon him, Kofi finally broke. He confessed to the assault, his voice filled with a twisted sense of entitlement. He tried to justify his actions, claiming that Amara had led him on, that she had owed him something for his admiration. But the elders would have none of it. Mama Abeni stood and spoke with the authority that only years of wisdom could bring. There is no justification for what you did, Kofi. You have committed a grievous crime against Amara, against our community, and against the values we hold dear. You will face the consequences of your actions. The decision was unanimous. Kofi was to be arrested and handed over to the authorities in the nearest town, where he would stand trial for his crimes. The villagers, who had once respected him, now looked at him with disgust and disappointment. As Kofi was led away in shackles, the weight of his actions finally seemed to crush him, and his once proud figure slumped in defeat. For Amara, watching Kofi be taken away was a moment of both sorrow and relief. The man who had caused her so much pain was finally going to pay for his sins, but the victory was bittersweet. She had lost so much because of him, her innocence, her peace, and years of her life that she could never get back. But she had also gained something: the strength to fight back, to reclaim her life, and to stand tall in the face of adversity. With Kofi's arrest, a sense of closure began to settle over Amara. She had faced her darkest fears and emerged stronger, more resilient than ever. But there was still one thing left for her to do, something that would symbolize her journey from pain to healing. On the day of Kofi's departure from the village, Amara decided to dance once more. The village square, where she had performed so many times before, was filled with people eager to see her dance again. This time, however, there was something different in the air. The dance was not just for the villagers, it was for Amara, a celebration of her strength, her resilience, and her ability to rise above the shadows of her past. As the drums began to beat, Amara took her place in the center of the square. The familiar rhythm filled her ears, and she closed her eyes, feeling the vibrations of the earth beneath her feet. Slowly, she began to move, her body swaying gently to the music. The sadness that had once plagued her was still there, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it flowed through her movements, blending with the joy and the peace that she had found. The dance was a story in itself, a story of pain and loss, but also of healing and hope. The villagers watched in awe as Amara twirled and leaped, her movements graceful and powerful. This was not the dance of a girl who had been broken, but of a woman who had risen from the ashes, stronger than ever before. As the dance came to an end, the crowd erupted into applause. Amara opened her eyes and looked around at the faces of the people she had grown up with, the people who had watched her struggle and now saw her triumph. Her heart swelled with a sense of accomplishment, but also with a deep, abiding love for the community that had shaped her. Zola stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes filled with tears of pride. She knew better than anyone the journey that Amara had been on, and seeing her friend dance again was the culmination of everything they had worked towards. Zola rushed to Amara's side, embracing her tightly. "You did it, Amara," Zola whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Quote, "The end."